Are you ready to head down the rumor mill? Because I want to share the subtle hints and links we've gotten so far on a new, smaller cruise ship that Royal Caribbean has in the works up next. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. And if you're like me, when you think of Royal Caribbean, you think of them building these giant, amazing cruise ships. But Royal Caribbean actually has, we think, plans for a smaller ship class on the horizon. Now, Royal Caribbean hasn't said anything officially about this, but there's been enough subtle hints and jabs and nods to the head to indicate that something is definitely up. There's been enough hints and rumors over the last few months to indicate that there are some sort of a plan on the horizon we can expect. And actually, Royal Caribbean's top executive, Michael Bayley, who's the president and CEO, has acknowledged these plans' existence. But what is this all about? What should we expect? And when can we actually look forward to a formal announcement? Well, let's start off with what we do know. And that is that these new ships would be called the Discovery class, also referred to as Project Discovery. As early as July 2023, Mr. Bayley couldn't help himself but start referring and alluding to this idea of a new, smaller ship class. Back on the President's Cruise in 2023, Michael Bayley was asked if, Royal Caribbean was going to build a new smaller ship class. And he said, quote, "It is something that's certainly deeply in our consideration and our planning at the moment that we have a lot of conceptual work going on. I think when we're ready, we can announce steps that we'll take to do just that." Since then, Mr. Bayley has talked about it off and on about this idea, and it went from like something that he kind of alluded to actually calling out the Discovery class. In fact, in August of this year, Michael Bayley was doing an interview on Instagram of all places, and he just basically came out and said it. Quote, "We're working now on another class of ship called the Discovery class, so that's going to be super exciting. That'll come out in about 3 to 4 years from now." So while we know that Royal Caribbean has this plan for a new class of ship, what does it entail? What is it going to be all about? And it seems like Royal Caribbean wants this to be a replacement for its aging fleet. Remember, Royal Caribbean has almost 30 ships in its fleet now. And while we often talk about the newer ships like Icon of the Seas and Utopia of the Seas, Odyssey of the Seas, Wonder, there's a lot of other ships in the fleet, and many of them are approaching 30 years in age. The Vision class, especially, are one of those ships. And between the Vision and the Radiance class, they represent two things. First, an old ship, and they obviously don't have all the features and whiz-bang amenities that the newer ships have. And number two, they can fit in other ports that the big ships can't. Ships like Icon-class cruise ships and Oasis-class cruise ships are wonderful, but they're not getting into a lot of the different ports in Europe or going through the Panama Canal, or even sailing from places like Tampa or Baltimore. Now, to be clear, we don't actually know what the purpose of the Discovery class is going to be or its scope, but Mr. Bayley has talked about the fact that they recognize there is a need out there to replace these ships. In January 2024, on Icon of the Seas during a press conference, I was there when Michael Bayley, once again, talked about some of this work being done. Quote, "From a brand perspective, we recognize we've got two classes of ships, Radiance and Vision, that are doing phenomenal. They're beautiful ships, beautifully constructed, but they're getting older. So we're obviously concepting thoughts and ideas on how we would ultimately replace these ships with a new class of ships," end quote. Beyond this point, we're really going to delve into some real speculation, because beyond the fact that the Discovery class exists and Royal Caribbean is somewhat working on it, we know next to nothing else about it. But a lot of the hints from people around Royal Caribbean has been that it will be a smaller ship. Now, how small, no one really knows at all. But the idea, again, is to replace the aging Radiance and Vision class ships out there. As an example, for what it's worth, I'm not putting a lot of stock in it. During May 2023, the Radiance of the Seas captain was talking during an event on board the ship and said that the new class of cruise ships would be around the size of a Radiance class ship. Now, Radiance class ships are obviously not the smallest in the fleet, but they're also far from the largest. They measure around 90,000 gross registered tons. As an example, Icon of the Seas comes in at a whopping 250,800 gross registered tons. Royal Caribbean Senior Vice President and Chief Product Innovation Officer Jay Schneider alluded to the fact that this new ship would be relatively smaller. Quote, "I'm careful to say small, but a less than large size class of ship," end quote. One thing is clear about this project, and that it's definitely still in the conceptualization phase, and Royal Caribbean is still noodling through some ideas. As an example, Kara Wallace, who's Royal Caribbean's Chief Marketing Officer, recently talked about this and basically said that the Discovery project is in the stage where the team is brainstorming about what to include. They're thinking about open-ended questions like what if and what's missing. She was careful, though, to say that size isn't the distinguishing factor here. What they're really looking for is what's missing, what do guests want, and going from that perspective rather than saying we're going to limit ourselves to this size of a ship and work out from there. Of course, you could argue that Royal Caribbean has those needs of building a ship that is newer, has more to offer on board, but can still access places and ports that certainly the bigger ships cannot get there. Going back to Michael Bailey's interview on Instagram, if you do the math on the fact that we're in 2024 now, and he said at the time 3 to 4 years would be when this Discovery class ship could possibly debut, that looks to be around 2027 or 2028. And interestingly enough, earlier this week, Royal Caribbean Group President and CEO Jason Liberty was asked about, well, if you were going to build a new cruise ship in general, not just Discovery class, but just in general, if you're going to build a new ship today or order a new ship today, when would it be ready? And you know what he said? Probably not until 2027 or even 2028. During the Royal Caribbean Group earnings call on Tuesday, cruise line executives were asked if they were effectively done with any new ship showing up before 2028. And Mr. Liberty said, quote, "I think for the most part, you certainly have seen all of our orders through 27 and maybe even into 2028. He danced around the question, didn't want to get into much specifics, just simply saying that they look to continuously, moderately grow their fleet. If you were a lawyer out there, you'd certainly say that's circumstantial evidence and not a smoking gun at all of anything, but it's just kind of interesting that those dates kind of line up there. And of course, Mr. Liberty, when he was talking about those dates, is not only talking about Royal Caribbean International, but obviously other brands within the fleet, such as Celebrity or Silversea. So it's not to say that everything that they're talking about is necessarily tied to what we're talking about here with Royal Caribbean International. Speaking of circumstantial evidence and things I wouldn't necessarily hang my hat on, back in January of this year, Royal Caribbean CEO Michael Bailey also posted on Facebook in response to a comment that if Royal Caribbean was going to announce something about the new ship, he was hoping to do it by the end of the year. He was responding to a random comment on Facebook and said, "The Royal team is working on a new class, and I hope if all the needed hurdles are tackled, we can announce something this year." End quote. So if you're like me, you're looking at the calendar, and we're running out of this year to go. That isn't to say that there isn't time to do so, but realistically, we're getting close to it. And obviously timelines shift, and Royal Caribbean isn't necessarily in a major rush for it, but this is where we're at. The other food for thought consideration is simply that Royal Caribbean's other ship orders that we do know about are pretty stacked right now. And to me, that kind of points to they're pretty set with the big ship stuff, so maybe it would make sense to go for a smaller ship to kind of augment that. As an example, in 2025, we're going to get Star of the Seas, which will be the second Icon-class cruise ship. In 2026, we get a third unnamed Icon-class cruise ship. And then in 2027, we get a fourth unnamed Icon-class cruise ship. Then on top of that, in 2028, we'll get a seventh Oasis-class ship. And by the time you get to 2028, Grandeur of the Seas will be 32 years old. Now, 32 years old in cruise ship age isn't what it used to be a while ago, thanks to refurbishments and amplifications, but that's still a really old cruise ship for a mainstream line like Royal Caribbean. Okay, that's all the rumors and tea I can spill about the Discovery class. Let me know in the comments below, would you want Royal Caribbean to build a new smaller class? Or do you say bigger is better and you want them to go even bigger than the Icon class? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down below our video, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. It helps our channel out, makes it easier for you to know about our new videos, and it's totally free. Thanks for watching. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.